On second thought, episode 360, powered by Hook'em.com. Cedric Golden here with the Duck, Kirk Bohls of the Houston Chronicle, joined by baseball royalty Jim Schlossnagle of the Texas Longhorns. 14 and 1, rolling early, opening up conference play Friday in Starkville, Mississippi. Coach, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Excited to be on with you guys and get conference play started.
Said I was kidding Jim after the game went over UTA if he was going to bring the SEC to its knees, and he kind of avoided the question a little bit. So he
Why
knew
you
this was
always trying,
a
why you always
setup.
trying to bait people, Doug? Why you always, I mean, you're always
They're
trying to get
they're
them to say
hey, they're
something.
14-1.
Good Lord. Good.
There's nobody that brings the SEC to its knees ever in baseball. So
Or
you can
football.
eliminate that.
Uh,
You can eliminate that from your vocabulary moving forward.
I mean, football,
what a
baseball,
league.
basketball, softball. I mean, it is
Crazy.
the greatest league going. I gotta ask you, Jim, are you one of those guys that doesn't like to talk about streaks? Because I know Kevin Costner and Bull Durham told Nuke, we don't mess with streaks here.
Yeah.
Are you one of those?
Yeah. I'm probably in the middle. I mean, it sounds super coachy, but um, just worried about the next game, or not worried, but just preparing for the next game. And those things. Last night's game's over and done with. I feel good about how the guys have played in the first, you know, 30 whatever percentage. We've played 15 games, so that would be maybe a quarter of the games, 25% of the games. I think we've shown we can win games in different ways, but life's about to change, man. And it's not that the baseball necessarily changes because the game's still the game. But the other teams are really good, and the other coaches are really good, and the players are really good. And I was given some advice a long time ago that if you ever coach in the SEC, you need to remember that you're never going to have better players than the other team. You have to have at least as good of players as the other team. And so um, when that's the case, you have to play good baseball and you have to have some things go your way. You have to endure some punches to the gut and you got to move on to the next day. So um, we're prepared, but I think everybody around here is about to experience what I've experienced for the last 3 years, and it's awesome, but it's very challenging.
Well, nobody knows the strength of the SEC better than you and Max and Nolan and your staff competed in it. And I asked you after the UTA game if this looks like a Texas team that resembles the type of team that needs to compete and contend at a high level in the SEC so far.
Yeah, I think as long as we keep Spencer and Harrison and those first six or seven pitchers healthy, I mean, they're going to have bad days too, but I think they give us a chance. And then the position players think, kind of the same thing, Max and Jalen. I mean, really, this little run that we've been on, at least the last 10 days out in Vegas and stuff like that is, you've seen our best players play really well. And I think that has to happen for any team, but that really has to happen for this team because we just don't. We're just this program isn't at the point yet where you're going to run an all SEC player, off the bench to fill in. I mean, I'm not saying the guys we have on our bench can't help us win, but it does remind me of a lot of my first year at A&M, where we had a great core group of guys, and we stayed healthy for the most part, played really well when we needed to, had a lot of breaks, and we actually ended up winning the SEC West. But we're a long way from that right now. But I'm excited about where we are.
So this 14 straight wins is the most wins in a row since the 2005 team opened up the season at 16 and 0. I was the beat writer on that team and just really enjoyed my time with Augie. Now that team opened up Big 12 play at Baylor and got swept. And Augie, as we're walking off the field, he goes, We're number one in the country and last in our league. And he was not happy. Did not like losing to Steve Smith. Just did not like losing to Steve Smith. But I was going to ask you, for our audience that's never been to Stark Vegas, what kind of atmosphere can they expect at DeMont Stadium? Chris Lemonis has them rolling 6 straight wins, 10-1 at the house.
Yeah, it's what do they call it? The Grand Old Opry or
I think
of
so, yeah.
college one of those terms. But yeah, it's really amazing. If I think I'm correct here. There's less than 1 million people within 3 hours of Starkville, Mississippi. 25,000 students. I'm sorry, about 30,000 students. About 25,000 people live in Starkville. Um, but yet, on a pretty day, on an SEC weekend, you could have upwards of 18,000 people in there. 15 to 18,000 people, and uh, I think their football stadium seats 55, 60,000. So baseball in Starkville has traditionally been a really big deal to the athletic department from a financial standpoint. So they're heavily invested in it. They've always had great coaches, and Coach Lemonis and those guys. They're Jake Gotro played for me. Their top assistant played. I recruited and from McAllen, Texas, and I coached him at Tulane for 3 years. So I know how good he is. But you're gonna have to go down there and you have to deal with a great team, and you're gonna have to deal with big time crowd. So I'm hoping the weather. Um, I checked the weather on the way in this morning, and they changed it from 90% to 100
Oh, wow.
percent
That
chance of
works.
rain on Saturday, so I can't even use Jim Carrey's line of "You're telling me we have a chance to play." But yeah, so it's going to be one of those deals where we're going to be dodging weather. We might be playing double headers, that kind of thing. So it's going to be all hands on deck, kind of weekend.
So I guess the cowbells will be ringing all weekend, I guess. I don't know. Is that about as intimidating an atmosphere as there is in the SEC and maybe college baseball?
I think yeah, it's certainly in the conversation with College Station, with Baton Rouge, with Fayetteville.
Right.
Um, there aren't divisions anymore, but it used to be that the biggest atmospheres were in the SEC West. Now Tennessee's is really good. When South Carolina is winning, it's awesome, really awesome. But yeah, Starkville, Mississippi, and Oxford. I mean, they're all great, great places.
And as a schedule, you think Jim prepared y'all adequately? You played in a couple big tournaments and won them both. So how much does that help mentally?
I think it does. I think playing at home does too. I mean, there's comfort when you're playing at home, but when it takes a lot to be a baseball player at Texas. There's a lot of expectations. I can remember being on the other side of the field in this ballpark, and we'd maybe at TCU or whatever, and we'd get a lead, and the fans they weren't happy with their own team. They were getting upset at their own team. So, which I understand, but I think the talent we haven't played in maybe a huge crowd like we're going to, but when you're playing those big league especially the first weekend of the year, you're playing in a big league ballpark, there's a lot to take in for a young player, and being able to handle your breathing and be in control of yourself. I mean, that's a skill we practice. So our guys are prepared for it, but they have to go experience it. And so I'm looking forward to see how they react.
I've got to ask you about your second baseman, Ethan Mendoza. Literally under the Mendoza line at the early in the season, started 0 for 12, and now he might be the hottest hitter in America. He is smoking 2-run triple Tuesday night in the eighth inning. What's gotten into him, and how does that trickle down to everybody else when the leadoff man's smoking like that?
Yeah, I think even in that 0 for 12 or whatever you're talking about begin the season, there was a lot of great at bats in there. He was hammering baseballs, um, drawing walks, getting on base. So he's been really consistent. Um, and I'm sure he's going to have his moments. He had a couple of those over the weekend, but he uses the whole field to hit, And when you can go foul line to foul line, teams can't really play shifts on you. It opens up the field. He doesn't swing and miss very much. Excuse me. He takes pride in his walks. So, and he's really playing a good second base. Made a great play last night. So we definitely feed off of Ethan, and super glad he's on our team.
Casey Borba's another guy that's kind of, shown his stuff over at third base, and Anthony Rodriguez, talented switch hitter, freshman, was been playing DH. You plan to kind of keep that as is, and as Borba kind of solidified himself at the hot corner over there.
I think I think Casey's certainly pushed himself more into the mix. Adrian is not going to just be the DH. He's going to get to play some third base. He would be our backup shortstop at the moment. So I'm not going to just let him sit over there and not continue to develop as an infielder. So some of this is dependent on who we're facing on the mound. Um, some of it could be dependent on the development of other players. I still believe Easton Winfield's going to be a good player for us. He's really pressing. He feels the weight of the world on his shoulders right now. We got to get some left-handed hitters in that lineup at times against some of the pitching that we're going to face in the SEC. Cole Chamberlain took his best swing last night. So it's all relative to that, because if we're facing a super tough righty and I'm like, hey man, we got to get Winfield going and we got to get him in there. Well, that could affect everybody else in the lineup and who plays type thing. So, but Casey's done a nice job. He normally puts together a good at bat. He needs to learn how to use the whole field to hit. Um, you know, Guys who hit poolside ground balls all the time are usually not, going to succeed much. So that happens in games, but the best players use the whole field. When you see Rodriguez using the whole field, when you see Jalen using the whole field, when you see Ethan using the whole field, even Max Ballou, does that. That's what the best hitters do. And if you want to put together a good season and not be shifted on and be able to be pitched to a pattern, then you better continue to evolve as a hitter.
You
Okay.
take that personal, don't you, when the team shifts on your players?
That's a little facetious, but yes. Sometimes teams shift based on the pitcher. Like, for example, I was looking yesterday morning at the spray chart of hitters against Max Grubbs. And when he has a really good sinker going, the right-handed hitters just don't hit the ball to the right side of the field. So, that may be more of a product of how good the pitcher is than maybe the hitter's inability to use the whole field. But yes, I'm always joking with our guys that, I do take it personally because I feel like our job as a coach is in baseball is to help them develop as hitters first, right? And hitters use the entire field to hit. And then as they get older, then they can maybe develop power and be able to lift the ball and hit it out of the ballpark. Um, so yeah, we're always continuing to do that.
I was going to ask you about the stopper competition. Is there a guy that's emerged in your mind? I know Burns came in and got his second save Tuesday night. Will Mercer's off to kind of a slow start. Ruger Riojas has been up and down, and Dre Duplantier has had his moments. Um, do you mind the possibility of going with a committee, or do you think a guy's going to emerge as we go along here?
I think a guy could emerge. As Max Weiner says, we're not starters, relievers, or closers. We're out-getters, that's the mentality he tries to instill in every pitcher. Mercer, I don't know if he's off to a slow start. I mean, I thought his first outing was awesome. Got, one pitch away from getting a save and maybe building some confidence on that. He's had a little arm injury that I think actually tomorrow he's allowed to start playing catch again. I'm hoping we can get him back because he would be a big piece. But shoot, Ruger's finished games. Dre, it's more matchup driven. And I think the more guys that you can get experience in that role, then you're not relying necessarily on one guy. I mean, it would be awesome to have one guy emerge, like some of the great teams we've had in the past. Uh, but for now, it's just going to be whatever the matchup is.
And you're pitching. I mean, you bring together this pitching staff almost the last second when you took this job in June, and 11 combined Division I starts by the staff, and then Jared Spencer and Luke Harrison just start out like gangbusters and pitching great. How confident are you in your starting rotation, and dare you put a freshman Dylan Valanis in as the number three starter, or I know you're taking it game by game.
Yeah, I have no problem pitching Dylan and starting him in an SEC game. I don't have any problem pitching Flores in an SEC game or rolling Max Grubbs out there if we haven't used him. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I am confident in Spencer. Uh, Harrison, he sprayed the ball a little bit lately more than I would prefer, more than he would prefer. Uh, and so, but he throws strikes. He's got multiple pitches. He just got to be in the strike zone. You can't. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You can't give up free bases and get behind in counts. And especially as the weather starts to warm, a lot of these SEC ballparks, including ours, they play pretty small, and you can't set the table for these great hitters, and these great teams. What is it? 12 of the 25 teams in some of these polls are in the top 25. I mean, from the SEC. So it's just
It's
this
crazy.
league continues to get better, and but Spencer and Harrison, Valanis, I mean, Ruger, Max, all those guys can help us, and most of the time you just have to piece it together.
I know you're confident in these guys, but how forward are you looking to see how they react to a big time opponent in a hostile environment? I mean, Stark Vegas is raucous. How excited are you to see how they react? Because adversity will come, it won't.
Yeah, yeah, super excited. Yeah, just really excited to I mean, I'm 54 years old and have had almost every experience you can have in college baseball besides winning the last game. But you really get excited for the players to go and see the other towns, the college towns, the crowds. Uh, one cool thing about Starkville is just well, they call it I don't know if it's left field lounge anymore because it's all the way around the field or the outfield lounge, but they'll wear you out and then they feed you like a king. And I was down there for regional in 2001, 2000, and lost, but it's really fun to go in there as a conference team, and I think being on the first Texas team that gets to experience that, I'm looking forward to seeing their faces and then seeing how they react. It'll all be good learning experience.
Dad, I don't know if you've looked at the records.
What's that?
Tennessee 17-0, Georgia 19-1, Alabama and LSU 17-1, Arkansas 16-1.
What a crap!
Florida,
What a crap!
I mean, Ole
Horrible,
Miss just had
horrible.
a 13-game winning streak snapped. So, I mean, it's just going to be a jungle out there. Do you have any idea, Jim, what winning record might win the SEC is with so much parity in the league?
well, I think you have to go back and look last year. I think there was like only five or maybe six teams that had a winning record, and then you had five teams, 13 and 17. Um, and
That's
four of those five teams made the NCAA tournament, and Florida played all the way to the Final Four. And so um, I think Tennessee, obviously, they're building on their success, and they have a chance to have one. If there's going to be a team that maybe has a gaudy SEC record, I guess it could be them. LSU, the programs that have been able to stack recruiting class on top of recruiting class on top of recruiting class, and then take advantage of the portal because of their success. Um, that's where we're trying to get Texas. Obviously, A&M still has a great team. They have super elite weekend starting pitching, and they'll get it going at the plate. I have no doubt about that. So, and they're preseason number one by every poll in the country. So, I'm sure one of those teams maybe could have a gaudy record, but everybody else is going to be in that 17 and 13. If you're good, maybe 20 and 10, but there's going to be a lot of 16s and 14s and 14 and 16s. And those are really, really good teams. And you're just trying to survive it. So you can get in a regional and then you're prepared for anything.
aren't many sweeps, I bet, are there?
Not very many, and you certainly when you're scoreboard watching it when the game's over, you're hoping there's no sweeps, so there's no big swings
Oh yeah.
unless it's your team,
Right,
you know.
right.
But yeah, you're hoping for 2 out of 3s for somebody. Otherwise, people will start pulling away from everybody else.
Well, Jim, it's going to be a great weekend. I know weather is a factor, but it's scheduled 6 o'clock Friday, 2 o'clock Saturday, and 1 p.m. on Sunday. The first two games are going to be on SEC Network. Plus, get the app. Don't be cheap. Don't be cheap. The best college baseball conference in the country. Don't be cheap. Sunday's on the SEC Network, so most of you guys have that. So, Jim, we appreciate you joining us. Have fun in Stark Vegas, and we're about to party. This is when the fun part starts.
Yeah, this is it. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on today. Have a great weekend.
Good luck, Jim.
You too.
Thank you, buddy.